Hello everyone and welcome back to another video on the channel. Today we are back for another video and it's been quite a while. I actually moved to a different state. I'm actually now in California. I dealt with a hurricane and an earthquake within the first couple weeks of being here, but I'm back trying to make videos, and if this setup is a little bit different and maybe sounds a little bit different, this is the first video I've tried making in my new place. So if it sounds a little bit echoey, sounds a little bit weird, this is not the final setup. I'm still in the process of moving, but I wanted to talk about Ahsoka because this just dropped on Disney Plus a little bit earlier than I thought it was going to be, so I kind of had to scramble just because I'm excited to talk about this show, the Star Wars show I've probably been the most excited about since the announcement of all the shows that they've been doing. And of course, this is Dave Filoni's baby. He's the one who created Ahsoka along with George Lucas back when the Clone Wars was first starting on the animated series, and now she's finally making her own series debut. Of course, she appeared in The Mandalorian Season 2, and she was great in that, and of course, she also appeared in Book of Boba Fett, but this is now her own show, and so we're going to get into some spoilers for this first 2 episodes of Ahsoka because I really want to get into some of the details. And as somebody who has not entirely watched all of Rebels, I'm kind of in that middle spot where I don't exactly know exactly how Rebels ends, but I am familiar enough with these characters to have some sort of input on how they are being brought over to live action. So let's just jump right into the first 2 episodes of Ahsoka. So what is Ahsoka about? Well, essentially it follows Ahsoka on her journey to figure out where Thrawn is and to try to stop him before he gets more remnants of the Empire to rise up to form what we are all assuming is going to be the First Order eventually down the line. And this is all stuff that's set up in Mandalorian Season 3 and Mandalorian Season 2, and of course all these stuff from Rebels with the ending of Rebels as well, which again, I have not seen the ending of Rebels, but I've heard essentially him and Ezra disappear at the end of that season, presumably dead, but also presumably lost somewhere in the galaxy, banished to some other galaxy out in the distance. And so that is essentially her mission, is to stop Thrawn from rising. And of course we have that Dave Filoni directed, Star Wars film that's going to come out in a few years here, which is also extremely exciting. So I think this is all culminating to that. What I've always said about these Star Wars Disney Plus shows is they kind of feel like all of them are one giant show that's just Star Wars, a series, essentially, where Mandalorian was the first series, and it kind of went into Book of Boba Fett, which is just another Star Wars series that had all these same characters going in and out. Now we have Ahsoka that's also these same characters. This is just a new season of Star Wars in general, and so they're all kind of tying together to this finale that we're going to get from this Dave Filoni movie, and this is very exciting because, of course, the build up to Thrawn, and from what I have seen from him, because I think I just finished Season 3 of Rebels, so I only have 1 season to go, but what Thrawn did just at the ending of Season 3 of Rebels, the meticulous nature of how he plots and how he plans things, I can see this guy, of anybody that's left in the remnants of the Empire, being the person to bring it all back together. Because Moff Gideon was a force of nature in the Mandalorian show, but he was not necessarily the meticulous planning one that would be able to bring back the Empire in a First Order type of way. And so with Thrawn being that threat, I find this very interesting. Of course, in these first 2 episodes, you don't get any of Thrawn. You just get this mission where Ahsoka has to find this little orb thing that's going to be a map to where they were banished off onto. And there's also these other characters like Lady Morgan Elsbeth, who was also in that episode of Mandalorian Season 2 that featured Ahsoka, and she was captured at the end of that episode, and now you have her in this prison transport at the beginning of this episode that is then broken out by BAYLAN, played by the great Ray Stevenson, who passed away earlier this year tragically, which he is phenomenal in this show. I think his presence just in that opening scene alone makes you really intrigued with this character. You're very much drawn to his performance and also his Padawan's performance. These 2 dark side users, you don't exactly know what they're doing. There's also this other character that looks like an Inquisitor type thing, which I heard some theories saying that might actually be Ezra, which again, I haven't seen the ending of Rebels, but if he started to go down a dark path, if he can be manipulated by the dark side in some sort of way and he's being used as an Inquisitor by Thrawn, that could be an interesting take as well. So I'm very curious to see if those theories pan out. But this, in general, these dark side users, these 3 characters that are introduced in this series are all very interesting, but you really don't get to learn much about them in this so far. Basically, you just know Ray Stevenson's kind of the leader of this group, and he's working with Morgan Elsbeth that is trying to bring back Thrawn. That's all you really know about these characters, and I'm very excited to see these characters get more explored and more their backstories explored and why they are doing the things that they are. And with Rey being this former Jedi, why did he leave the Order? I'm sure we're going to get some flashbacks to Order 66 as we tend to get in all of these shows, and I'm very fascinated by these characters, and I want to see more. I want to see a lot more of them. But this show also features the return of the Rebels cast. This very much is a sequel to the Rebels show, and so I've heard also some people talking online, if you've never seen the Rebels show, will you be able to understand understand Ahsoka. And I'm hearing some conflicting things, and personally, as somebody who's kind of in the middle, there's only really one question that I have. And, you know, I'm familiar with the characters. I do love Sabine quite a bit. I do like Hera. I think that Mary Elizabeth Winstead is the perfect casting ever for Hera. And same thing with Natasha Bordizzo as Sabine Wren. I think both of these actresses are doing a great job bringing these characters to life. I will say that when you have a transfer from live action or from animated to live action, there's a sense of these characters not feeling as animated and as lively, and the personality is not coming through as much as it would in animation, because animation is going to animate things, you know, it's going to be a little more animated, it's going to be a little more lively and fun and lighthearted, and this feels a lot more of a tonally darker, more serious show, which for me, it does really work. But I also have heard some other people saying that the show can feel a little bit dull with these performances because their personalities are not fully there. People are kind of depressed a little bit, you know, especially with Sabine Wren's character, who is a character who apparently goes through a lot in the 4th season of Rebels, which I have not yet seen, but there's something with her relationship with Ezra that I haven't quite seen yet, and, you know, she's so much more of a hardened character, and there's this past backstory with her and Ahsoka that is not explored, and that's one thing that I've been confused about, because I know essentially what happens by the end of Rebels. I know something probably happens to Kanan. Spoilers if you haven't seen Rebels. I just know he's not in this show, and I can only imagine the worst for his character, and so I guess that could affect Hera's character in some sort of way. And, you know, Ahsoka was not seen since the 2nd season of Rebels, so I don't know when she comes back into the fold, or if she comes back into the fold, because this whole dynamic of her being the master for Sabine's character learning the Jedi way, that I have not really heard too much about at all. I don't think that's actually featured in Rebels. I think this is all some backstory that takes place between the ending of Rebels and the beginning of this show. So I don't really know what this dynamic is, and I'm pretty sure it is a new thing. So I think, if anything, that's the one thing that I am confused about as somebody who has not yet finished Rebels. But in terms of the characters, I think that Sabine is set up as a pretty interesting character. Of course, being the apprentice to Ahsoka. Of course, if you know the backstory of Ahsoka, you know that she left the Jedi Order, she left Anakin, and now apparently she abandoned her own Padawan because she has those sort of issues where they don't know if they're ready to be a teacher, and Sabine doesn't know if she's ready to learn the Jedi way, and they just are not ready in their own dynamics. And I think these first 2 episodes do a great job showing that arc of Sabine in particular going from not wanting to do this whatsoever, you know, being intrigued to figure out where in the world Ezra went, because she has that relationship and has that friendship and has that want to find him again, but she doesn't want to dive into the Jedi Order just yet. But by the end of the 2nd episode, she cuts off her hair, she gets back in her costume from Rebels, and she's ready to go. I think if I were to have any real main criticism for these first 2 episodes, it's the fact that, you know, the show is called Ahsoka, and I feel like I haven't gotten a lot of what Ahsoka is doing in the show besides the plot aspect of her character. I don't think that she has too many characterization moments in this season so far, just based on the first 2 episodes where she goes from not wanting to train Sabine to, okay, I guess now she's ready, so now hopefully we get some sort of a character arc for her. I just don't really see a clear arc for her just yet in the show, besides the fact that she just wants to find Thrawn and she's going through that plot path. And so I think these first 2 episodes do a great job setting up these characters in terms of like debuting them in live action for most of them, and also setting up the plot threads of what they're doing with Ahsoka and Sabine and Hera and Chopper and all these characters going on their journey to find Ezra and to find Thrawn. And so you have all of them get back together, all be united to go off on their mission. But in terms of characterization, really Sabine has been the focus of this show so far, and I love her character, so I'm all here for it. But I want to see more Ahsoka, and I'm very curious to see where she goes, if she has some sort of connection with BAYLAN later on, or when those, you know, forces clash together. I want to see what exactly happens with that. And just in general, I want to see more of Ahsoka, because I love this character so much, and I want her to be that lively character that was from Clone Wars. But even in Rebels, Ahsoka was not really the same. You know, she was a very much hardened character that didn't have that innocence to her ever since the Clone Wars ending, with everything that happened with Order 66 in the final season of Clone Wars. So there's a lot to be desired with this character, and that liveliness that I feel like is missing from this character. But also, it's been so many years, so if that's the tone and that's the direction that they're going with the show, hopefully by the end of this 8-episode run, they can stick the landing. But as of this first 2 episodes, honestly, I think it was a great start. I think the production value, the designs, the cinematography, the visual effects, and especially the score is absolutely phenomenal. On technical standpoint, this is probably the best crafted Star Wars series to date so far, and that's even talking about The Mandalorian, which I think, you know, say what you will about the 3rd season of Mandalorian, you know, some episodes here and there are not as good as others, but in terms of the production value, especially in that 2nd episode of season 3, it is some of the best Star Wars visual effects that I've seen put into a show or movie. And so the production value on what Lucasfilm does with these shows is off the charts, and I'm excited to see how that progresses throughout this entire season and see how big this show ends up getting. Another couple things that I want to talk about before I get into my predictions for what's going to happen with the rest of the show is I love the fact that they're bringing in a Witch of Dathomir in live action. I like the kind of, it is definitely a retcon, making Lady Morgan a witch from Dathomir, because I don't think that was ever mentioned in that episode of Mandalorian. I think I need to rewatch it just to make sure, but that feels like a nice little retcon because she has the look of that part. I like the magic being used already with this character, and I'm very curious to see how they explore that more in live action, because those are some of the characters from Clone Wars that I thought felt so out there in terms of Star Wars, that felt very specific for this animated series. It's like, man, I don't think they would ever do that in a live action Star Wars, but you see a little bit of her green magic in the second episode, which is extremely exciting. I want to see a lot more of that. And also the fact that they brought back Clancy Brown as Governor Azadi is extremely, it made me so happy. I don't really know why. Of all things that happened in this entire, first 2 episodes of Ahsoka, the things that got me the most excited was hearing Ahsoka's theme in a live action show, which got me so unreasonably happy, and seeing Clancy Brown playing the character that he voiced in Rebels. That was just, I don't know, I didn't expect that to happen. I didn't hear about him being cast in the show, but that also made me extremely exciting to see, the other characters that are playing the same characters that they voiced in Rebels, like Grand Admiral Thrawn, which once we see him, that is the actor that voiced him in the animated show. To see how he brings that to life in live action is very exciting to see, and Clancy Brown is always a win to see in anything that he is in, so it's all very exciting. I'm very excited to see Ezra and all the stuff that's happening with that. So in terms of predictions for what they're doing with the rest of the season so far, obviously they're going to find Ezra and Thrawn at some point in this show, and you're going to figure out exactly what Thrawn's plan is at this point in time, and I don't think this is going to have any sort of conclusive ending by the end of the 8th episode. If anything, I think it's going to split off and venture off to see what Thrawn is doing with the Empire and how that's rising up. That's going to affect the next season of Mandalorian, because what I thought happened with Mandalorian season 3, which I know a lot of people were kind of mixed on that, it felt like they were trying to wrap up the storylines that they had previously set in Mandalorian so they can start this brand new arc that is the whole Thrawn sort of section of this new Star Wars timeline. And so I think that is why they ended season 3 of Mandalorian the way that they did, so season 4 of Mandalorian can be all focused on this brand new storyline. You've moved past Moff Gideon, now let's get on to this new thing, and Ahsoka is going to be the thing that springboards this entire thing that goes into Mandalorian season 4, and that goes into, what other shows are they planning? I'm sure they're planning some more shows that's going to happen before the Dave Filoni live action movie that he's going to do. But one thing that I've never heard really anybody else talk about in all the conversation around Star Wars is in Rise of Skywalker, when Rey is lying down on the ground and she's hearing all the voices of previous Jedi in the past, with the Force. All these characters have passed away at this point. She hears Luke, she hears Obi-Wan, she hears Kanan, she hears all these characters throughout the entire series of Star Wars, Mace Windu, all these people, including Ahsoka.
Every Jedi who ever lived lives in you.
The Force surrounds you, Rey.
Let it guide you.
And so I don't think Ahsoka's going to die in this season, obviously. I think she's going to make it past that. If they do a season 2 of Ahsoka, that'd be really great to see. I want to see more of Rosario Dawson as this character, because I think she's great casting for this choice. But by the end of the Dave Filoni movie, honestly, I think she's going to be the one who lays down her life to take out Thrawn, even if he does eventually succeed in creating the First Order. As for the rest of the Rebels characters, who knows? If Ezra is that, Inquisitor type character that we already saw in these first 2 episodes, that's going to be an interesting direction to see exactly how he got to that point. I'm going to try to watch the rest of Rebels before the next episode comes out next week, but overall, those are my predictions of the show, of how it's going to lead on. I think it's going to end on cliffhanger, and I think it's going to lead to this movie that's going to go through season 4 Mandalorian, maybe season 2 of Ahsoka, that's going to culminate in the death of Ahsoka sacrificing herself to take out Thrawn. I'm marking that right now. This is my prediction for what they're going to do in the future of Star Wars. So, just credit me for that. If I get that right, I get that right. And if I get that wrong, eventually Ahsoka is supposed to die because I heard her voice in Rise of Skywalker, right? Am I the only one that heard that? But that'll be it on my thoughts for Ahsoka, the first 2 episodes that just dropped on Disney+. And as usual, for all these Star Wars series, I try to have a video out every single week for every time a new episode drops for all these series when it comes to Mandalorian or Ahsoka or whatever shows they do here on in the future. So definitely subscribe to the channel to see more reviews and more thoughts on my Star Wars thoughts in general on this channel. Also some reviews on some movies. I'm going to do a video later this week that kind of does a bunch of catch up on a bunch of movies that I did watch that I just didn't have the time to make a review for. So definitely keep an eye out on the channel for all of those things. Subscribe to the channel, leave a like, comment down below your thoughts on Ahsoka. It's the first 2 episodes, and I hope to see you all in my next one.